All right, we are going to go ahead and get started.
Go, Sean.
But we're going to do our favorite thing in the world and start with a minute of silence. Let's do it. You said 20 minutes? 30. 30 minutes? Oh, don't tempt me.
I think we should spend this entire hour.
You guys just don't want to have midweek.
Oh, nobody's getting.
So, yeah, minute of silence. All right, let's see. It wasn't very loud, but it went off. Anyway, anybody have good news?
We got our plot for gardening. For those who don't know.
Got our
Basic tortillas.
just
Got our gardening.
considering everybody else is in on it.
Yeah.
You guys want our garden.
What is going on?
You know, it's actually closest to your house.
It is.
I didn't hear, what did you say?
You bought a garden.
We got our plot.
Yeah.
Got a plot of land for gardening.
Like just a random plot of land?
Yeah.
It's at the back of the bridge.
It's nice fertile ground.
My boss, like, she is the one she had me go water sometimes. I'm there, yeah, it's a community, like, in, like 5 lots.
15. What is it?
You can rent a plot of
15
land.
by 30.
Plant.
By 30.
Like your vegetables and stuff.
Yeah, if you look on Google Maps and like the satellite view, literally it's like the cemetery, and then there's just this patch of dirt,
It's a big. Yeah.
and that is where we're gonna farm.
And you, like, you guys are collectively renting this entire place?
So we
No,
bought
we
two,
got a
we bought 2 big ones. And we're gonna separate it among the 3 couples,
9.
that way whenever someone's not there, we can water.
900 square foot, wow.
Yeah.
If you guys want it in, I can ask for
Yeah,
a
so
third.
that's what else.
No.
I was trying to get in that vibe, and I really.
Have you noticed that we have a flower bed in our house that hasn't been?
That's what I figured. I'm like, you were asking.
The tortillas are like, we'll just take a tomato every now and then.
Yeah, if you wanna.
That's solid. Plant some avocados that we'll get in like.
You can't deny anything that thinks you're.
Cilantro?
Yeah, we can do that.
Absolutely. If all goes well, my parents will be here tomorrow night. If my dad doesn't come, my mom will still come. But yeah, I'll be here for this weekend. At least,
And I'm still gonna look at houses are big. You know.
if my dad comes for sure, my mom just comes.
Yeah,
and
probably
then
not,
probably-
right, yeah.
I don't know how close it is, but isn't that other family moving this month? Supposedly.
Yes, they're supposed to get here the 15th, so
Thanks.
we have yet to get his right phone number. So
Yeah.
who knows if he actually exists, but.
What if it is him and he's playing it off?
I
I do not know you
that's-
people.
He gets here, he's like,
Oh, no. Yeah, so they're supposed to come in 2 weeks. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. Should we throw them like a little welcoming party or something, like?
But no, I think we should just ignore them and never
Yeah.
talk.
Well,
to
that's
them.
usually what we do, so that's probably.
Change it up a little bit.
Maybe I should be hospitable.
That's what I'm saying. So when was the last? I don't remember. You guys married it, that's different.
Other good news.
Like at the book club meeting last night, I like shared some spiritual stuff and ended up afterwards having like a really good conversation with Kayla about religion. She's like reading a couple books right now, so and she grew up kind of religious, so yeah, I think like I'm gonna try to like meet up with her at some point
Yeah.
or like have like a closer friendship, but yeah, that's really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple people in that book club that are
Oh, yeah.
very openly not about God.
Yeah.
And so it's like
Yeah.
we talked about this past book, Cassandra Speaks, and the very first chapter is about Eve and like about some what
We're
like
going
some
on a
of,
rant.
yeah, it's about some of like she goes through kind of what some of the early church fathers say about Eve, which are not very flattering.
All women. is what they're
Yes.
saying. It's not black.
Read the book before, and literally in talking about the book, she turns and looks at me and goes, "Now I know you're a pastor, but." She's like, "This is just what the book says." It's like, yeah,
You know you're in the bottom.
The campus retreat went really well.
yeah.
So there, I mean, there's some stuff. We had to do registration and it was just like talking, but like people calling us at like 12:30. Oh,
No.
Sean, and like, I'm just trying to sleep. And like, you're like, hey, and there was this one girl from Pittsburgh I knew, and she's calling me at 12:30 on Saturday.
You don't get it. I'm sorry.
Lacey literally,
I handed,
The bridegroom has come and you.
she called me the second time, and I was like, I can't do this, Sean. Get the phone, because I was like, I can't, like, I'm trying not to sound aggressive to this girl, but, and I talked to, I talked to someone in Pittsburgh who received her, and she was like, I don't blame her either. And I was like, it was really good, and I think like Abby, I know Abby got a lot out of it. She's like, she loves the retreats. Like every time she's always like, that was so much fun, and like she makes new friends, and like she's really open to it. Austin came, which is fun.
It's a
Yeah.
very spirit filled weekend for us in the Hawks.
Yeah. But yeah, it was good.
She's the only one.
oh. Yeah, you guys have now you guys have a double dose of the spirit.
Yeah.
Filled with two different.
Laying on of the hands and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
We went to the TED Talk and Michaela
Yeah.
and two visitors from Cincinnati came.
Yeah.
Their younger brother.
Mountains.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they came to the
Alex.
TED Talk.
Alex.
Oh, cool.
Really cool.
I've been really trying to, at work, just work, like having that mentality of work as a work, like not skipping any corners, not doing things by the book, by policy, by, the way it's meant to properly be done. And I think a lot of that can sometimes irk some people who are not either used to that or used to like going around, doing it the easy way or, just not the appropriate way. And it may turn out fine for them, but I'm either very much like, I want to do things right.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is my first quarter, yesterday was the end of my first quarter as a manager and doing really well, and like my manager gave me props, and so I was really, I think I'm really honestly proud of being able to work as a working. and do stuff like that, so.
Eventually it'll be that guy who people go to because they know you get it done.
Yeah, and my manager, like, he came in and fixed a lot of that, like, that's what he initially did last January, is came in, is like, none of this is policy, we need to do this right, and so, I came in under previous management, being trained under the old, like, oh, we do this, and this is policy, but this is kind of what we do instead. And I really didn't want to do that, because I did that at Sherwin, and it got me in trouble, so I didn't want to do that.
And I didn't want to get in trouble again.
I want to do it right, like, I want to be trained correctly and train. I want to be trained correctly and I want to train correctly.
Integrity.
Thanks, girl, appreciate it.
Other good news?
We're here.
We're here. Yeah, like you said, the campus retreat was a great time. It was, the Ruperts came in from Jersey, and so. I mean, they're just really good speakers. They're way more professional than any of the ministers in the EHR. So we were debriefing afterwards, and we were like, did anybody record their stuff? And Matt Rupert was like, I actually recorded my stuff, like, it'll be up on our website, feel free to share that with your students. They're like, you have a website? Like, what the heck? They have a group meeting. But it was great, like, I mean, we had 240 disciples up in Ripley, and so it was.
Oh, yes.
For the OBR specifically, I mean, we had 80 at our fall retreat. So for us, it was like huge. And I think it was cool to get a kind of bigger picture of, our church family. And I'm really glad that Karen and Abby were there to be able to see that.
We missed you, Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson unfortunately was sick, which sucks. We keep on guilt tripping him for not being there so that maybe he'll be at the next one.
You need a quarantine. You need a 2-week quarantine period before all campus are free.
But we did like a bunch of the ministers stayed afterwards. And so we got to hang out on Monday, kind of Sunday night to Monday morning. And it was just really refreshing, like coming off of a retreat as I started to get sick Sunday night. It's like just to spend time together and not have like things to plan. It was really nice. So anyway. So we talked about fighting cleanly on Sunday. So we have boxing gloves. We're all gonna fight each other.
Oh, cool.
It's not anything like Rocky, like this.
The movies. They just try to keep their face.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't learn how to fight cleanly from Rocky. But before we dive in, let's pray. Dear Father God, that I am so grateful to come together, God, as part of your family, as part of your kingdom, God. I am so grateful for this opportunity just to be together and talk about how to have conflict and how to actually deal with these things, God, not to sweep them under the rug or just ignore them and let them build up into bitterness and all these things that are just not pleasing to you, God, but that we actually get to learn how to have conflict in a healthy way, in a way that resolves the issues and that actually builds relationship rather than dividing it. God, I love you so much. I pray all these things according to your will. Amen. So we talked Sunday about how to fight cleanly. We talked a bunch about conflict over the last 3 months. And so we've talked about it a bunch. We'll just kind of review the steps quickly. But before we even set up a conversation to talk about things, we have to climb the ladder of integrity. That was last week. And so we have to do the internal work. We do the internal work we need to in order to gain clarity about what's going on inside of us. And by climbing the ladder of integrity, we actually figure out, is this a conversation I need to have? Or is this something that I need to work on myself? Right? We identify the root of the issue. And then we set up a go conversation, right? And that conversation is modeled off of Matthew 18. Matthew 18, starting in verse 15, it says, if your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault, just between the two of you. If he listens to you, you have won your brother over. But if he will not listen, take one or two along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. If he refuses to listen even to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. And so we set up a go conversation, right? That's go and show your brother or sister their fault. Right? That's the idea behind it. And so the steps are, we set the stage. And so we set the stage and name the topic. Right? We pick a safe location, not the middle of church, or not right next to the crush, or not, all of those things. We think through the setting and we name the topic. We tell them, hey, I want to talk specifically about this. Then in the conversation, we start by asking for their perspective and listening. You say, hey, I want to talk about this issue. I wanted to hear what was going through your head when this was happening. What were you thinking about? What was going on? And we use all of our incarnational listening skills. Right? We talked about that 2 weeks ago. So we sit and we listen, we're not defensive, we ask questions, we follow up. Then the third step, asking for perspective and listening is the second step. The third step is we provide our own perspective. We share what we've discovered using the ladder of integrity. Say, hey, I was thinking about this and I had to, and the ladder of integrity doesn't have to take, it's not like this deep, profound, take an hour and a half and, stare at the horizon and contemplate the deep intricacies of your life. It can take 5 minutes. Right? We can sit down and get clarity within ourselves before we go into conversations. But the third step is that we provide our own perspective. Oh, I appreciate that you didn't think that would hurt my feelings, but it did. The fourth step is developing an agreement together. So you work together to actually come to some form of an agreement, something that is reasonable and agreed upon. Right? That is, the conflict is not over until you actually have an agreement in place. And then finally, the last step is to follow up. A week, 2 weeks, however long afterwards, you follow up and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any lingering bitterness or feelings about things. Everything is put to rest. And so are there any questions about the steps to handle conflict? Cool.
I can't think of it.
Somebody come up with questions on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, we've talked about this, talked about it a bunch in December. Talked about it again on Sunday. We've been talking about it for a while, so.
I feel like the only place that I would probably ask questions is, well, what if you can't come to an agreement? Or both sides still think that they're correct. Technically, both sides can be correct. In their own,
Yeah. Yep.
you're allowed to have your own feelings, and they're allowed to have their own feelings about the situation, but those feelings may be correct. no agreement may be able to be reached,
Yeah,
yeah, technically speaking.
yeah, and that's. In Matthew 18, the model that Jesus gives is. Go and point it out. If you can't solve it. Take somebody else with you. Right, and that's what Rich mentioned it on Sunday, but that bringing a mediator, like. You know, you have a conversation and it's not like, you know, one conversation and if it doesn't go well, you bring in a mediator and like. But I think. If it's a repeated like conversation, and then. You've had like 3 conversations and nothing has changed. You need somebody to kind of mediate, somebody who is able to say like. All right, I'll listen to both perspectives, listen to both sides, like, I want to help kind of sort through this. And the vast majority of conflict, we will be able to resolve, you know. Hey, when I walked into church and you didn't say hi to me, it hurt my feelings. Oh, I'm sorry, like, okay, like, the vast majority of conflict should be small things. And then there are obviously bigger things that take a little bit more time. And then, you know, there are huge things, but that's a very small percentage of our conflict. And so, yeah.
Speaking for myself when I say this, so I don't,
No,
Don't wanna-
speak for other people.
okay, I'm speaking for failure. What'd you say? Oh, yeah. My nature is to just, a lot of things. I can just let it roll over my shoulder. And so, I guess if I had a question, it would be. Should I sweat the small stuff? Like, I feel like. In the past, we've talked about. You know. The ministry in Huntington is a bit quiet on that front, right? So I feel like at some level, maybe is it a call to, you know, we do need to just kind of engage in that sort of thing, or like, not that I'm gonna be going out and looking for it, like,
Yeah.
but I don't know, is it, that would be my question. Should we be caring about the stuff that really, like, even if it naturally kind of was like, oh, well, it wasn't a huge deal, like, I didn't care, for your example, like, it didn't say hi, it did affect me, but it's something small.
Yeah, I think ultimately the question is. Does it cause me to withhold love in some way? Because that's really what like the consequence of unresolved conflict is. We hold back in some way, and so, you know,
Yeah, I think that's great, but can you continue loving as much as anything else? Like, can you continue loving this person? Despite of that.
Yeah.
And full, like, it's like, all right, there's that, I still love this person,
Right.
Or is that creating bitterness, like you said, a sense of.
yeah. And I
It
think
is.
definitely. And I think bitterness oftentimes doesn't start as like. You know, some giant thing that like smacks us in the face, like it's a bitter root that grows over time.
Right.
And I think that's. Like having dealt with those things beforehand, it was like. I've had quite a few people that I've been bitter at. Confession.
I mean,
Not
this-
either, no. No, not either.
Let's speak for Cody.
Yeah. But it like. The way those things developed was it was unaddressed things that made me upset, but I went to bed. Like, honestly, it was like stuff that I got frustrated about, went and talked to other people about, and then I went to bed and woke up the next morning and forgot about it. And like, those things leave a mark on our heart, even if we don't, unless they're resolved. And so,
Shouldn't there be like a little bit of balance to that though, like, you know, like. Example, the one you gave of like, someone didn't say hi to you at church. To some extent, that could be more of you're insecure than they're unloving.
Yeah.
Like, or you got frustrated, you need to have more patience, like,
Yeah.
you know, like, at what point are you like, this is something I need to go work on versus this is something I need to bring up to
yeah.
a different person.
And ultimately, I think the ladder of integrity will help us to discern those things.
Yeah.
And I would rather have it's more beneficial for you to address all of the little things than not mention any of the little things. It's more important for us to say, hey, when you didn't come up to me in church, like I was really hurt by that. Because one, it may be exposing something in them. But after like the 6th or 7th conversation like that, you go, oh, this is a me problem. Versus if you just ignore it, there's no feedback. There's nobody who's able to say, hey, this is the 4th conversation we've had. And this is the 4th time that you walked in. I've been on the opposite side of the building and you get upset that I don't say hi to you. Like, you know. So I would lean towards bringing things up and addressing it than not addressing it. And we will naturally kind of eventually settle on, you know, eventually we'll get good enough at conflict that we're like, okay, that's not that big of a deal. And, you know, we'll be able to.
Yeah, I definitely think conflict should be like, conflict isn't always bad.
Yeah.
You know, I think it is finding that space where both people can find that agreement, where both can feel validated in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And you can find peace.
Yep.
On both sides. I'm glad it's being trained now. It's not just like a arbitrary thing that, you know, go talk to this person.
Right.
Like it's actually something that we're learning what's the best way to do it. See, are you setting the stage? I'm tired. What's the topic? Are you moody? Are you hungry? Or are you bored?
She didn't like what you were saying, you know, like, no, let's not address conflict.
Oh, that was scary.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, and here's the thing, there's a difference between talking about conflict and being in conflict. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but talking about conflict is really easy.
Yeah.
Talking about conflict is like, yeah, I get it, cool, I know how to do that. Right, talking about conflict is very safe and it can be divorced from reality. Like the reality of what's actually happening. But being in conflict feels very unsafe. And it can be confusing to navigate. Right? You know, like, hey, you didn't say hi to me. You know, like, well, you didn't, you know, drive me here. Like, what does that have to do with anything? And so there's a level of putting this into practice that is difficult to do in like a group setting.
Oftentimes your conflict ends up being emotionally charged too.
Yeah,
And can't really practice the emotion part.
yeah, we'll talk about that. Oh, we'll get there. But the reality too is conflict may not be resolved in one conversation. As frustrating and annoying as that may be. But that's okay. Like it's okay for it to be an ongoing, continuing process. But the reality is the beginning of the conversation is the most important part. That kind of determines the direction, how the conversation goes. And so And that's, the reality is that's where most conversations go south. He's just staring directly at me. It's like,
Helpless.
yeah. She's like, I can't tell if I like this or not. Anyway, the conversation is really the thing that we have to nail down. Because again, at the beginning of the conversation, if it starts to go south and continues to head south, it will do nothing but head south. So as you begin a go conversation, safety has to be the #1 priority. Without safety, no conversation can actually be had. And by safety, talking about the ability to share vulnerably without fear of being attacked or ridiculed. So if you think of I've heard this used as an example, like a women's lesson. A man being at a women's lesson he has a toxic presence in that environment, like in that context. Like if it's all about, if the lesson is specifically for women and the man then goes up and tries to take over the lesson, bad news, bad idea.
We'll send him off the stage.
Wow.
Good thing
You
you
guys
weren't.
don't know about it because nobody ever.
It's good that you're in the book.
Yeah.
But that would be like an example of a time, like a situation where that is not that's not a safe environment, right? That's not a safe place to share those things. Similarly, in conversations, we can have conversations with people where it is not a safe environment, where either they feel offensive, they feel attacked, or we feel attacked, or whatever. And so the two biggest, the areas where people don't feel safe is when someone either believes that you don't respect them, or someone believes that you don't care about their goals. And so it's mutual respect and mutual purpose are both, those two things are needed in order to have a conversation and have conflict in a healthy way. And the tendency, the reaction there is people either go to silence or violence, right? We talked about that previously. But that people either completely shut down and stop sharing anything. And if somebody doesn't share anything, you can't have a conversation, obviously. Or they lash out and then they're so emotionally charged that it doesn't even matter, like that conversation is going nowhere. And so when safety is threatened, conversation cannot continue until safety is restored. And so the way that we maintain and restore respect is by telling the full story. So in conversation, as we're sharing something, saying, hey, when I came to church, like you didn't say hi to me, that really hurt. If someone reacts and goes, I can't right, they get all flustered, they get angry, they lash out, they call you names, whatever. We have to ask for the whole story, right? And so it's not, I walked into church and you didn't say hi to me and you hate me and I never want to talk to you again. You are not respecting that person, right? It's, hey, I walked into church, you didn't say hi. I was wondering what was going on, what, I felt a little hurt by that. Was that an intentional thing? By asking and understanding for the other person's perspective or their side of the story, we teach ourselves, okay, my story is not the story. My story is one of many stories that, who knows, maybe it's Rich Bartoli and he has 750 50 billion things to do on Sunday morning and just didn't get a chance to say hi, you know? And then the second thing with, we maintain and restore purpose, mutual purpose by sharing our intent alongside of the content. And so we share, hey, you know, you didn't say hi to me at church, like I felt really hurt by that. I just want to know, like, I wanted to talk to you about it because I wanted to know if there was something that I had done. Like you're sharing the intent behind what you're sharing. It's not just, you know, you didn't say hi to me and you're a scumbag. Like there's a level of sharing intent. And so by protecting these two concepts in conversation with mutual respect and mutual purpose, we're able to navigate conflict and get to a resolution. And it helps us when somebody either completely shuts down or somebody reacts, you know, and it doesn't have to, you know, reacting doesn't have to be they punch you in the face. It can be something as simple as like you see they get flustered or you see they're, you know, they let out a deep sigh. That's me, like, all right, that's weird. And so those should be signs to us that, oh, there's something deeper going on. There's something that is threatening the safety of this conversation, and I can't move forward until I address those things. So we've got some discussion questions. Short midweek.
No, we haven't got over yet.
Oh, yeah, sorry, but it's good.
Yeah. 7-4.
So some discussion questions. 1, do you feel equipped to handle conflict in your daily life? 2, what types of conflict do you typically avoid? And then 3, have you ever noticed silence or violence in your conversations and how did you handle it?
Feel much, I was just gonna say, I feel much more, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel much more equipped after this, you know, 2-month stint of like,
Now, after this midweek, you said,
yeah. Did a great job.
this one.
You prepared me. I think, yeah, I feel like I've been able to reflect on a lot of past, and even like in the midst of conflicts that I've had and how I have not handled it well. Like I've ran it through the, you know, ladder of integrity.
Yeah.
And then you know, those go conversations and like I just didn't, it just wasn't done. And so I feel like I am equipped. I have the things on me now. It's just like you said, being in the moment versus talking about the moment is a lot of pressure. So and then a lot of times I feel like I handle silence a lot better than violence. And then I think that might be because that is how I react to because I'm silent, not violent. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I will be very silent. Like, and then on the flip side, I'm okay with asking probing questions to try to draw some, you know, something out. So that's
Nice.
I like it, so I think like growing up, like I think like I'm fine with conflict itself. I don't think I was ever taught how to like deal with it properly, but I think like I'm okay with like conflict. I'm really bad at like figuring out the points that led to the conflict and stopping them before they happen. So I think like through all of this, it's been really helpful, but like because I think I've needed help to identify like what gets me to that conflict, because I'm very much like, I'm the person that gets really emotional and reacts very emotionally, because I let all those things boil up until the point where it boiled over, I'm mad, and now I'm angry at you. So I feel like this has been helpful trying to get me to be like, hey, like, I feel this way, I can figure out why I'm feeling this way, instead of like just waiting for it to escalate. And then like for work, I had to take a certification. I said it right, I said it weird, right?
You did, you just hit everything.
Yeah. For Title IX and like identifying Title IX and like identifying like sexual harassment, and like they want you to like, if you see something, like you report it, and like that makes me uncomfortable. Cause like to me, I'm like, that's just not my mentality. Like something has to be really bad for me to like hit that point. So I think that's just like my mentality with all conflict, is I'm like, something has to be really bad for me to bring it up, and then, but at that point, I'm so emotional that like it doesn't get handled well. It's like for Title IX, they went to like, if you see something, it was like funny, I was at the gym and the delivery man, he like came up to drop something off at the front desk, and he told the front desk, he was like, hey, pretty lady, like, how you doing? And then I was like,
Snitch.
like, to me, but hey, just this kind of situation. But I think I definitely, the last question was what again?
Have you ever noticed silence or violence in your conversation?
Yeah, I definitely have. I get silence. I just get like, I get so emotional and reactive, so I'm either the one who's very emotional and reactive, and if I haven't thought it through yet, I come in swinging. Or if someone like caught me off guard and I didn't know it, I get real defensive, and then I come in swinging.
So I did say that I'm more reacting in a silent manner. How I didn't say how I handle it. More often than not, someone, if they don't draw it out, I have to like be replaying the scenario in my mind, you know, and then I'll reflect on it. And then I don't always like go back and like do anything about it.
You have to follow up.
Yeah.
You're awake.
So I'm Go.
I feel like definitely a could, but even like, but even further, I think even thinking about how to avoid conflict and it like, being self-aware to, not like conflict avoidance, that's not what I meant, but how to catch it, being aware of yourself, being aware of other people. I know like even Freddie and I, when we were dating, we didn't talk past like 11 p.m. or midnight, something like that. And this mainly it was because we would argue after a certain time, and because I get really irritated. I'm tired. Like even last night we had a little bit of conflict. And I mean, I don't like that. I knew she was tired. Yeah, that was nice.
You're either tired or you need a snack.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, even if I go to work really tired, like, it's hard for me to work in this hard for me to resist gossiping and just being like complaining about my patients and stuff like that. So, like, just knowing myself. What is that? What's the word for that?
Self-aware?
Awareness, actually.
Self-actualization. Is that the word?
I think that was the word they used, yeah.
Is super important.
Definitely feel equipped. I feel like I'm more of a person to upset somebody else before they upset me.
That's probably true. I can back you up.
Pretty sure.
I said that because it wouldn't upset him. I said that because he literally said it doesn't talk about
to set the stage. Topic is.
Climb ladder, sorry.
No, but like, I'm more likely to. Else would live. But I'm pretty comfortable in having hard conversations or like approaching someone about something. But I think I can very easily let things go too. And be more on that side of like, it's not that big of a deal. And then a couple months, maybe a few months later, something else happens again. It's like, oh, they did that like months ago, like 6 months. And, oh, wait, maybe it is bitterness or something. And then like, it's been a while, so I'm holding. And then it comes up again. I start building a record. But I don't let it like, well, I normally don't let it like overwhelm me, but I know I'm doing that.
Yeah. And I think the reality is there's a difference between addressing something for the first time and addressing the pattern. Like the first time we talk about something, it's the content, it's the actual thing. But the subsequent times, it's the pattern that's.
And just understanding the pattern versus, is this a 6 month long, like once every 6 month pattern, or is it like every?
Yeah. Hey, I noticed every Sunday you steal my communion code. Please stop doing that.
That would be a problem, that would be a problem.
I can go. I think for me, I feel pretty well equipped. I think over the last like year or two, I've realized like I need like a period of reflection, and I'm now realizing that's the latter. Basically, like I need to sit down, like when it's little stuff I like I really don't care, but like if it's something like big emotional, I need to take time away and actually process it and figure out what my feelings are, and then I feel pretty like equipped. But if I don't do that first, if I don't do the latter, then it's just downhill from there. So other than that, like that's just a necessary step for me. And then what was the other questions?
What types of conflict do you typically avoid? Have you ever noticed silence or violence in conversations? How do you handle it?
I don't know about the second one. I'm just gonna skip it.
I'm gonna avoid that question.
Yeah. I just don't know. I'm not thinking of it. Like maybe I would say like usually. Yeah, I'm sticking with it. Okay. I'm used to avoidance. But I mean, specifically, I know that a lot of times it's like processing and like thinking through things, so I'm usually okay with it.
I never answered that one. I think silence is more annoying than violence. For me, like if I'm in conflict, if someone is being silent, I'm like, just talk, like,
Yeah, you wanna get there.
yeah, I wanna go in, I wanna figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be violent than being like, whether it's physical, whether, whether, like,
You'd rather somebody curse you out so you can go, what's that guy's problem?
like, all right, now I understand, well, or at least kind of understand through your cursing what you're talking about, but, yeah. I feel like silence is definitely more annoying than violence.
I'm confused with the third question. Is the third question what you do or what you're used to receiving?
I think both. So like in conversations, have you noticed when the other person either goes to silence or violence? Typically violence is easier to.
Sorry, they're having to thought.
They're gonna like, we're
I said, yeah, at her.
Like typically, I mean, violence is the easier one to go, whoa. I think,
What's the range of violence?
Like if you're emotional, it'll probably more, yeah, violence.
Is violence just But you're okay with bringing up the situation? To all the way of just exploding?
Right, I mean, violence, like at the most extreme end is like somebody punches somebody in the face. But
It
it's,
could be like gaslighting too, like
Actually, I
that you
like it.
present a problem to someone instead of them taking like accountability. Like Sean was saying, like, oh, well, you didn't say hi to me, like, oh, well, you didn't drive me. Like, I feel like that's like violence.
right,
It's-
yeah. Any kind of like defensive reaction, somebody's, somebody cuts you off while you're talking, somebody's speech picks up pace, like all the things that you look at, you're like, that person's getting angry, that person's getting irritated, whatever.
Like talking about you behind your, like, something that's
Yeah.
not even, that kind of, I feel like doesn't fall under that, but it's still intent to harm either commit or.
Right, yeah, somebody starts, they're like having a conversation about church on Sunday and they're like, well, you're not a very good disciple, so. You're like, what does that have to do with anything? What,
You're like, relax, Garrett.
I actually looked.
Part of that is funny because Garrett would never say that.
Well, part of it's funny because he was whispering the whole thing.
Yeah.
You can barely hear him.
Yeah.
Was I here? I think I find that violence pretty annoying. So I feel like with silence, versus silence, it's like, okay, I can just keep asking in different ways. Hey, why don't we sit down and talk about this? Whereas violence is when someone comes at you with these harsh emotions, and then you try to get through, and then they just continue being emotionally charged. It's like, okay, let's not talk then until you can calm down and actually have a rational conversation. Because that's you're getting nowhere. with everything you're saying. Even though it's obvious, okay, something's going on here. I just feel like we're not gonna get anywhere until you calm down. But when someone's silent, okay, I can dig until we get some.
Yeah.
More, so like I can dig more peacefully, more peace of mind
Yeah.
before we can get somewhere, opposed to this person's yelling, screaming in my face. I don't want to deal with this because now I'm at more risk of getting angry and upset. And I don't want that to happen. Because then instead of getting nowhere, we'll just go back.
and that's what
Me personally.
ultimately, like. With both somebody who goes to silence, somebody who goes to violence. There are ways to get back to a conversation. Like that, I think typically the way that we're taught to deal with it is. Somebody gets really emotionally charged. Go cool off. We'll come talk about it later, right? Or somebody goes silent and you go, well. That's it, I guess. And again, like the conversation ends and then you restart it at some other point. But the goal is that in identifying silence and violence, we can go, oh, this person either doesn't feel respected or they don't feel like we're working towards the same thing. And so if I can reassure them, hey man, I'm totally on your side, like. We're working together here, like, I'm not trying to fight with you, I'm trying to solve this problem with you. Or, hey, like, seems like you're really upset about this, like, what? Is there something in the way that I said it or whatever, like, we're able to actually address those issues and get back to a place where we have mutual respect and mutual purpose, and we can actually work through those things, rather than, Dave got offended again, so now we gotta separate, give him some time, and then we come back together, and same thing happens again, and then, 6 weeks later, he finally like gets over it, and it's like, been a month and a half, like, so, yeah.
How to have conflict.
I
That's the part that I got.
told Kelsey, that's at least she's violent and not silent.
Yeah, but she's violent with no understanding of what she's being violent about. She has not figured out her ladder of integrity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's even worse than someone who is, at least has some understanding of their emotions. It's like, with that, you really can't get anywhere. Like, I know I can get absolutely nowhere.
It goes from full tantrum to, I love you.
Yeah.
Have I shown you the video of the dad with his kid at Walmart? His kid throws a fit in Walmart and he literally starts the video and he has his daughter sitting on the roof on the hood of the car and goes, "Here we are again." And he's like explains like, "I'm not gonna let my unstable child run my life. Like, okay, you're gonna act like a child. You're gonna sit on the hood of the car. We're gonna wait 5 minutes. You're gonna get over it and we'll go back in." And she's like, literally on the way back in, she's like waving at people, smiling. Why am I catering my life?
Tears on her face.
Yeah. I mean, with her, what I really have to do is just remove the situation, sit her down, focus, and then go back, it's fine.
She's so attentive over there, just eat her snacks.
Right now. Yeah, Sour Patch Kids are like
I feel that.
absolutely a thing.
It's more relatable.
It's, yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant you were giving her some.
No, it's just, you know,
First
the,
there's song.
yeah, first
Yeah.
hour,
Yeah. I thought she was.
she doesn't go.
First she's sour, first she's sour, second she's sweet, then she's asleep.
And then the cycle starts over, and then she wakes up with a diaper, a full diaper, and so it just starts a whole thing.
Well, cool, good midweek. We actually finished 10 minutes early, which means we finished on time. In terms of announcements, we have.
It's 7:58.
Yeah, I know. Usually we finish by like 8:10.
Recently we have.
True.
So, anyway, announcements. Church this Sunday is in room 154, Smith Hall. Dell's are preaching.
Yeah, and I want to interject, just something to keep in mind for Sunday, just think about, the question I ask for people is think about kind of the high points of this emotionally healthy relationship series that we've been going through, and pick like one that's like really stuck out to you that's helpful.
We're not
Keep
done.
that in mind. What
We're not done.
about? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but eventually, one day. So that's all. Just think of it and just be chewing on that question.
Cool. Sweet. And then the Portito's doing the welcome.
We are?
Cool. I'm mostly confirming for myself more so than anything else. Oops. No,
Yeah, you want us or you want parents?
How were your parents be?
If they come tonight. Or tomorrow.
Other announcements. Midweek will be right back here next week. And
Oh, I have one. The cleaning crew for Charleston, Tri-State signed up for March. So the 2 weekends that we are there in March afterwards, Angie said she'd get us a list, but just like powerhouse through those too.
mostly vacuuming and.
Yeah.
kind of-
And if there's like a weekend that you're not. Let us all know that way. We can- I don't think it should take long. Yeah. I don't have that, so you guys have, but we are the month with every like a month, so it's March. It's-
Worship practice, March 18th. At 10 a.m.
What are you announcing that for yourself? Didn't look like Hop was very
Hopefully it
excited
is like
about
such
that.
a.
It's with the 10 a.m. on Saturday.
10 a.m.
It's not getting up at 10 a.m. You have to be there by 10 a.m.
Just go there Friday night, sleep in the church building.
10 a.m. is like.
But then you have the rest of your day.
Yeah, if you go at 1, then your whole day is.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah,
cool.
leave it on.
We gotta be honest afterwards.
I mean, I get the whole half hour pooping. That's it.
Just sleeping whatever you're doing.
Other announcements, the campus led service is the 19th. So get ready, get excited for that.
I'm excited.
The campus led service is March 19th.
Nice.
Garrett and Jackson.
Nice.
So, and then Troas night is the 31st. So remember to keep that on your schedules.
My birthday's the 25th.
Oh.
My birthday, I'm turning 30.
And that's all the announcements.
Yeah, I know.
So.
Take time, may not.
Those guys already living.
Get a dog.
You don't even have to.
Praise the Lord.
We also have a cat.
Yeah, you do.